And we're live.
It is my show, but so I'm going to let Andy introduce it.
Welcome, everyone, to PowerTec 10. I'm Andy Wood. You know David Vizard. I don't know why he's let me introduce him.
I'm the one on this. Well, you do a better job than I do.
Okay, whatever.
We've got such a big variety of stuff to talk about now that we have spent the last 15 minutes wondering where the hell we're going to start off, where we're going to be in the middle, and what we're going to be doing at the end. We have a plan.
Do
right? Well, you did. I'm just going on your plan. Right now, here's roughly what we're doing. You see our starter deal where it says the 100 horsepower cam, right? That was to get your attention and to get you thinking about, is that possible? Can it be done? What kind of things you might have to give up, etc. What you need to do to better able to get that and so on. So think about that. But we are not going to talk about that until all of you out there have given it some thought.
Yeah.
So that. Now, since our last video, we've done.
I've been busy. I don't know about you, Dave.
Well, I've been busy fixing stuff. Andy, I told everybody it was your birthday today. Hey.
It was yesterday.
Right. But he's saving everything for today. See those super thanks?
Yeah, whatever.
Birthday present.
Now, thanks, everybody.
The dyno testing. Andy has been up to about at least there, maybe about there in dyno testing, right? It has not all gone exactly to plan. However, if learning has been the function, it has gone very much to plan. The do's and don'ts. Lots of do's and don'ts have reared their heads here, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So
before we get into that, let's say hey to everybody.
Yeah.
We hardly ever get to do that since we don't have a guest. It's just David and myself tonight.
Yeah.
So it looks like we've got Broken Tool Garage, Andy Steele, Luke Simon, Thomas, Jimmy, Bobby. All right. Thanks for the birthday wishes, y'all.
My goodness.
I tell you what, turning 45. That's what I turned yesterday.
Really? Right. Which means I am way older than you are. Okay. You know what? I was approaching middle age when you were born.
Well, that's true. Let's see. I've known you almost 20 years. So, man.
God, is
it? Yeah.
Now, here's the thing, right? I don't remember Andy looking any different.
I'm a lot different. I'm a lot bigger.
I always remember him looking like this.
Yeah.
So for me, he hasn't aged at all. But I mean, I don't have many photographs to reference it. But anyway, look, all of these people here, on birthdays, right?
Yeah.
We've kind of locked the subject into your birthday, haven't
we?
No,
let's get back to dynos. Enough about me. So you know what's funny? Ever since I've been hanging around you and I go to the dyno, every time I go, I end up with more questions than I have answers.
But you know more. When you come back, you know more. But now with the knowledge you've gained, you're able to dig deeper.
That's true.
That's what it is. If you ever find a guy that says, well, he's never made a mistake during his engineering, the guy's never made anything, right? I contend that you learn more from your mistakes than you do
absolutely
doing it right. If you do it right first time, that's it. You've just learned that one step. But if you do it wrong the first 5 times, you've learned probably, maybe not 5 times more, but probably a great deal more. And if you get it right on the 6th time, your the scope of what you've learned is much wider. You, instead of being blinkered, it's like this. Well, when Andy goes to the dyno, it's not to find out how much horsepower his engine will make. It's to find out how much he can find and how much he can learn. That should be the goal of a research
absolutely
engine guy. And when Andy goes to the dyno, 25% of it is to see that the engine runs right and delivers good. The other 75 is to see what can we learn from this.
That's right.
Right. And the dyno's a great tool.
And the thing about it is, it's like going into the testing without preconceived notions about what you think's going to happen.
Yep.
And how things are going to turn out, because oftentimes that's when
screw things up.
It gets you in trouble quick.
Yep. I remember Smokey Unick telling me that most engine builders, most dyno operators and engine builders that he's had experience with, tend to have some kind of pre-existing notion of what should happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to work things towards what they think should happen, rather than let the engine do what it wants to signal to you what you should be doing to it. And of course, you have to be sharp to understand engineers.
Yeah.
Right. That's a new word, engineers.
Well, for me, instead of looking at power and torque numbers, I now look more towards, okay, what's the brake specific fuel consumption? Yep. What is the brake amine pressure? You know what I'm saying? All of these different things, looking at distribution issues. Let's see here. Broken Tool says dynos are great tuning and learning lessons. That's true. But the thing about it is, you got to be careful, instead of just chasing numbers, to make sure that what you're doing is actually going to work when it gets in the vehicle. Case in point, like if you go back to my Mixed Up Boss dyno videos, you notice that we put 2 inches worth of spacers on it and did all kinds of crazy things trying to get maximum power.
Yeah.
I know from firsthand experience that would not accelerate that good down the racetrack, because on the gear change, the engine couldn't overcome that loss. You know what I'm saying? You would lose signal to the carburetor.
It has a tendency to be a little soggy.
Yeah, so it wouldn't recover on the shift. Okay.
That's a good reason for not lifting.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Now, I don't know about everybody else, but on our road race cars, when I say ours, I'm talking about my old partner, Mike, and I. We had gearboxes that they were hopped up, blueprinted stock gearboxes. No lifting on the gas pedal, up through the gears, never lifted. Right. So, where was I going with this, Andy?
Talking about
the difference in the carburation, right? So recovery on it was not an issue. Now, of course, we also did not use Holley carburetors on there. Mostly they were Webers. Yeah. However, we can get instances where with the Weber, to get the power and to get the responsiveness up at high RPM, you need to have the airflow consistent with not necessarily having booster signal as good as it could be. So that recovery thing is, how can I say, you can feel it if you're doing a conventional gear change, but if you shift never lifting, it's not there.
Yeah. So I got a question for you here.
Oh, wait a minute. I saw
Hang on.
one down there.
Hang on. Let's answer this one.
That was it.
Yeah.
Eric. Right.
Darren Morgan uses flow cones rather than flow balls in some cases. Do you ever have dealings with this?
Yes and no. Now, let me tell you something about Darren Morgan, right? He is a guy that is inventive, not quite the right word for it, but it's getting inventive. Let's use inventive. Just because it's been done this way before or that way before, that does not mean Darren is just going to simply do it that way. Well, we've always done it that way. In fact, speaking to Darren, and I often get time to have an hour or so conversation, I think his flow testing is way more innovative than most people's are. So when somebody says, oh, Darren does this or Darren does that, he never surprises me. Right? I may not know why he does it, but he's going to do it to find out. That's why he's a good head porter.
Yeah. So someone's asking, Andy, do you know who Jim Smart is? I actually had a commenter on one of my videos from Jim Smart.
That
And
name
then
does sound familiar.
Jim Smart made a 307 small block Chevy making 505 horsepower. So your 408 with only 500 did not make the cut. Well, let me tell you, this was not a race 408 by any means.
No, this is a street motor.
Yeah, this is a street motor that's supposed to have an idle that's almost
Yeah.
like stock.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this baby idle's like not quite Cadillac,
but
I'll
it's
tell you
pretty
what, you'd have to
smooth.
stop and listen to the two of them side by side.
Yeah, the thing about this engine was this is going in a 67 Chevelle that Joe and his wife cruise around in on the weekends.
Yep. They go from one ice cream shop to a burger shop to an ice cream shop to a burger shop.
It has AC. The AC still works. The power steering still works.
The
Power
cup,
brakes.
The cup holder's still there.
Yeah, everything.
Right. It looks totally stock.
Yeah. So
it looks beautifully totally stock, doesn't
now,
it?
I will say about that engine dyno, we used a camshaft that Joe actually had, and we actually have another camshaft coming.
Yeah, that's the right one, which
But-
is part of a story that Andy's going to do.
Right. But make a long story short, if we're just looking at power numbers, it was about 50 foot-pounds short of where it should have been.
Yep.
And probably 40 horsepower.
Right. What did it make? 480? I said it should make about 525.
Something like
530.
that.
Right. And,
which is still really impressive considering.
And you're going to shift at 6.
Yeah. Now, if we were building an all-out race 408, it would be well past 500.
Yeah, near 700.
Yeah. Charlie's in here. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Charlie, where's Carla?
Engine Gremlin. What's the best way to contact you fine gentlemen for some collaboration work with new cylinder head design? You can email David here at davizard@gmail.com.
Right. Do not email me just because you have my email address. Let me tell you a story about emails, right? I was talking to the PR guy at Dart because I was wanting to get hold of Dick Maskin on the late Dick Maskin on something. And I was on the phone to him for about an hour and a half. During that hour and a half, he said, I ought to get back to work here. I've had over a dozen things, emails. And I said, oh, you're lucky. I think mine's past 90 in the last hour and a half. 90 emails, fellas.
Mm-hmm. A lot.
I encourage you not to email me just because you can.
Yeah. But on something like that, definitely hit us up. I actually put the email up in the chat. Here's a good question. David, why is the exhaust duration mostly longer than the intake duration?
Two things. Firstly, there is a delay time as the RPM goes up, right? When the exhaust valve opens, there is a drop in pressure at the valve. Well, that drop in pressure, you can liken it to a signal, i.e. it's a pressure drop signal, and it goes across the cylinder at the speed of sound. So the gases this side don't drop in pressure at the time the exhaust valve opens. They drop in pressure by the time the effect of that exhaust valve has gone across the cylinder at the speed of sound. Now, at low RPM, who gives a damn? That's so fine a distance that it
Doesn't matter.
Over there, right? But if you're turning an engine, a typical drag race Chevy, you're turning at 8,500. That's a typical one. I mean, hey, we've had them. We've turned to 10.5.
Yeah.
Right. And there's guys out there that have turned them to 12. Now then, when you're going that many RPM, two things come into play. First off, the gas is on the far side of the cylinder. Now have less time there's less time to communicate the signal from here to that there. So they open the valve earlier to make up for that. And secondly, there's less time overall to dump it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, the point of the fact is that with drag race engines, the compression ratio is high. Now, there may be guys like us who run pump gas and only use a 10.5, but your typical semi-serious drag racer
12 to 1
up, it's 12 to 1 on up. And here's what happens. With a high compression engine, the pressure drop or the power is delivered earlier in the cycle. So by opening the exhaust valve early, you don't lose as much from the power stroke, but you gain it from giving the exhaust longer to get out and having a better scavenge. So those are basically, that's the two reasons.
Yeah.
Right. Now, with a Pro Stocker, this 12, 13 to 1 compression ratio is there. It's 16, 17 to 1. And what this allows them to do, because the power is developed in the first 25% of the stroke, or most of it is, they can now put a bigger intake valve in and a smaller exhaust because it can hold the exhaust open longer.
Right.
Right. So that's why you find on a Pro Stock car, the ratio of the intake valve to the exhaust valve, it
so much
has
different.
a much bigger intake valve compared to the exhaust valve. Right?
And, you know, like on a typical street engine, I want to say below 6,000 RPMs, when you have a split pattern camshaft, let's say you start out with a single pattern, it's going to develop more torque earlier in the RPM band. When you put a split pattern camshaft in it, it's going to lose a little bit in the low RPM, but it will hang on to the power.
Yeah. It all depends on what you want.
Yeah.
This works for me. If I'm putting in a cam and I want the engine to have peak, and I'm talking about something like an engine that I want to peak about 500 to 5,200, right?
Mm-hmm.
A genuine street motor, then I tend to use a single pattern cam.
Yeah.
Right. And that works fine. But it does depend on making sure the exhaust is good.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So always look at that. If you want economy from a motor, especially important if you've got a big block, because they are the farthest thing. Economy's over here, big blocks are over here.
Yeah.
Off in the distance. So there's no point in making a gas guzzler into a bigger gas guzzler. So what's this crappy exhaust port?
Talking about using the longer duration to make up for the crappy exhaust.
Yeah, it does. Charlie, that's the end part of the sentence, not the beginning. So anyway, the point is this. If you're building an engine for fuel economy, exhaust flow is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Compression is very important. Intake flow is not as important because you can always cam it to make a lot of torque at some RPM.
Yeah.
Right? You may not make the horsepower, but remember, for street work, it's always torque that gives the satisfying driving experience.
Absolutely.
It's not top-end power. That's what you claim. That's your claim to fame when you get to the drag strip.
That's exactly right. Man, we've got a lot of
Charlie's always got something to say.
Yeah.
Charlie, where's Carla?
Wait a minute. He said she's in Tampa somewhere causing trouble. I did see that. Here it is. Yeah, Carla's in Tampa causing trouble. Well, keep her out of trouble.
Is she getting a high-performance car up together after her Buick's been written off, or hasn't that case been settled? Yeah, this is Charlie's daughter. She got a beautiful hopped-up Buick that she did a lot of the work herself, right? And I can't remember the circumstances now, but it was all the other person's fault. And she's still waiting to get paid out for it.
Thank you so much for that compliment. You read it there? Appreciates what you do. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, got it.
Eric, Charlie is great. He knows what's going on, that's for sure.
Charlie's fun to be around. He was up here the other week with Carla, right? And it was a blast, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think we should have done more work.
Oh, yeah. Oh, let's see here.
No, wait a minute. Kurt Osborne. I heard a claim from the AMC guys.
More than once.
Once that the stock 360 MC Rotec assembly is still good till 9,000 RPM in drag racing. Do you guys know anything about that? Well, yes and no. Here's my limited experience on this. Many years ago, we did some work who was an AMC guy who was also a champion in whatever class he raced in. And we tested our cam program on it, right? And he was over the moon. Now he's already champion. And what happened was he bought a cam from us that he was going to try on the dyno. I'm trying to remember, this is 30 years ago now. Bought a cam from us he was going to try on the dyno. And the engine ran so well on the dyno, he didn't bother to put it in. Well, anyway, when he got to the track, it was a bit marginal whether he was the fastest there or not. And he thought, you know what can these guys, this is when I was working with my friend Denny Wyckoff, what can these guys possibly know about cams that comp cams don't know? Right? And he thought, well, the hell with it, I'll try it. So he put the cam in. We got back, pulled the engine out, freshened it up, put the cam in, put it on the dyno. Well, changed it while it was on the dyno, right? And instantly made more horsepower. Now, he just shoved the cam in, lined up the dots, and the first pull, it was up like 20 horsepower and 20 foot-pounds. And then he thought, wait a minute, maybe I should have timed it in as well, because the other cam was timed in. So he then spent time putting the cam in at the timing we said, not the traditional 4 degrees advance. It was something special for that cam. Put it in there. Guess what? Another 15 horsepower.
There you go.
Right? Went back out to the track and annihilated the opposition and was champion that year.
Bobby here is saying that most 4-valve 4-cylinders actually use more intake duration than exhaust.
Now, this all depends on what it's for. If you're talking about a stock motor, then the situation that arises here is that the factory aren't chasing horsepower. They should be. They could be, but they are chasing emissions all the time. Now, I often wonder why the hell they do
4-valve cylinder heads.
4-valve cylinder heads for street motors. I think I'm going to do an article which shows that 90% of people have spent $1,500 to $2,000 on their cars that they didn't need to spend, but the factory convinced them they should, because this is a 4-valve engine. And a 2-valve engine would not just have been as good, but for what they want, better. It would have driven just as well, if not better, on the street, and they could have put probably $2,000 in their pocket.
So, in your opinion, what RPM do you consider 4 valves per cylinder being superior to 2 valves?
Well, we shouldn't look at it like that.
Well, I'm just for the average Joe.
There's 2 answers to that.
That's right? What I wanted him to do.
2 answers. Right. Let us assume that we've got a 2-liter 4-valve engine, 4 valves per cylinder engine, and a 2-liter 2-valve engine. Now, this one here can only accommodate smaller valves because it's got 2 valves than this one. Now, if this cylinder head is designed right, they get me to design it. This here will equal the performance of this 4-valve head, and it won't start lagging behind it until about 4,500 RPM. Then it will slowly lose out to the 4-valve until by the time you get to, let's use a reasonable street RPM. We'll say 7,500 RPM, right? The 4-valve engine will always out horsepower the 2-valve engine, but there's a lot more parts in it. It costs a lot more money, but we can step around this. What if we make this a V6 engine? Now, this is a 2-liter 16-valve engine. This used to be a 2-liter 8-valve, but it's a 2-liter 12-valve engine now.
Right.
Now, the smaller you make the cylinders, the bigger the valves are in area
to
per cubic inch. So our V6 engine with a single overhead cam or push rods, 6 cylinders, smaller cylinders, totally balanced, cheaper to make, will now match or almost match the top end power of this, but be much smoother and be better at low RPM.
Right.
And you'll save yourself at least $1,000 on the price of the car. Now you have to ask yourself, would you rather have, oh, I forgot, all these 4-valve engines now, 4-cylinder ones, they've all got those big counter shafts in.
Oh, yeah.
That's like
Your
having a heavier
EcoBoost
float.
has one, right?
Two. You could have 2. One, they go both ways.
Yeah.
Now, where is it smooths the engine out? I mean, that thing runs like a V8 in smoothness, right? I've tried to start it twice when it's already running. Remember the noise at the drag strip? You can't hear the engine running. You sure as hell can't feel it running.
Right.
I've tried to start the engine. It's already running. Now, a V6 doesn't have to have, especially a 60-degree V6, right? Doesn't have to have that. Packaging on a 60-degree V6 and a V6 in general is easier. The engine's shorter, takes up less room, etc., etc. So that's the way to go. Now, if you want more horsepower, it's about the same amount of money to put a turbo on this V6 as it is to have a 4-valve cylinder.
4-cylinder.
Now, let's say you want an engine with 300 horsepower. You're going to work your ass off on this 4-valve, normally aspirated 4.
Yeah.
This V6 here, piece of cake.
And it's going to have it
cake.
much lower RPM.
Yeah.
You're not going to have to turn it as hard.
The foot-pounds of torque on it will be more like a 4-liter engine.
Okay, so let's get back here. Hello from Australia. Thank you for all the knowledge you share.
You didn't get any of the sun's eclipse down there because it was nighttime.
Yeah, yeah. We did though.
You know,
did you see it?
You know, the Irish were going to launch a mission to the sun. They were going to land on the sun, right? And I remember I asked the guy who said we're going to do this. He said, "Oh, that's quite simple. We're going to launch it at night."
Yeah.
So it didn't get burned up.
So, okay, YouTube channel, 400 small block Chevy, block 283 crank, making 329. I watched a video on YouTube, this 329, 10.5 to 1 compression on the dyno. Thought it was nice, liking a bit of cam. And then he says it made 512 horsepower, 542 pound-feet from 329 inches.
What was the compression? Then I'll tell you whether the dyno was wrong or not.
He's saying 10.5 to 1. So that's
the dyno's wrong.
There's no way.
Right?
There is no way. That's physically impossible.
Whose dyno was it and when was it?
I mean, that's impressive. You just broken a world record for the most part. Have a good one to shed.
That 542 foot-pounds, you know, up until a few years ago, from 350 cubic inches and unlimited budgets, the cup cars weren't making that.
Yeah.
Right? My 2002 Chrysler motor made 540 foot-pounds on the dyno. That was 20 more than they got from the original cup, big time cup car, right? And what was it? Just 703 horsepower.
Yeah.
Right now, I did decam it for road course, not for going around super speedways. Not at my time of life, it's too late to learn to drive on a super speedway.
So going back to my dyno test, you know what I learned?
And it's 7:30. That was the scheduled time for it. Go for it.
So you know what my biggest takeaway was?
Other than Greg's really cool on a dyno.
The Quarterjet is much better than I thought it would ever be.
Yep.
And the single plane intake that everyone said wouldn't work did just fine.
Yep. Are you going to tell them how we did that?
So if you haven't watched my video series on the 408 sleeper project, we decided to build this combination with a single plane intake for a couple different reasons. One being hood clearance with this stock Chevelle hood, flat hood. Two, to give the impression that it was a mismatched combination to people who's looking at the engine. So being a little bit sneaky there.
Yep.
And then
painted black.
Painted black. And the third one is we knew that the Street Dominator had very small runners, and we knew that it would be a perfect fit for making torque for what we were trying to do.
Yeah. We always knew we can take metal away, but it's a son of a bitch putting it back.
That's exactly right.
Although that Goodson's filler was.
So if you haven't watched that, go check it out, because David told me some tricks that he did back in the day, 40 years ago. You and Roger.
Yeah, Roger and I did this. My good friend Roger, Dr. Air, right?
Roger Helgeson, right?
Roger Helgeson, yeah. This guy was
he was brilliant.
Yeah, he was close to a genius, right? I don't know how he ever got to sleep at night, because I'm not sure he ever turned his brain off. But we spent a lot of time on flow bench testing, both of us, and usually between the two of us at that. And it involved a lot of plenum work, right? People make a plenum, it's like, there's more to it than that. Plenums can be, to get the best, plenums can be extremely complex. I've got two videos that I put on my channel. One with a stock iron intake manifold for a Q-jet. And Roger and I ported that thing so that it made as much horsepower as the then current air gap, Edelbrock air gap.
Yeah.
Right. And on the outside, it looks stock. Now, the plenum was, and I guarantee this, I don't care if you live from now till 2,500, you will never even guess what the plenum looked like, because there's nothing out there that even remotely
looks like it. Yeah.
And if somebody says you didn't give credit to so and so on this and so, there was no other person to give credit to, right? So I don't want any of that BS.
Yeah.
I can't think what article it was, but Charlie, you'll probably be able to find it. Find out what article that was, and then we can tell the readers. Now, what was the other one I was going to talk about?
Well, we were talking about that intake and talking about the modifications that we put into it with the turtle.
Yep.
And
yeah, it's not.
I really wouldn't call it.
We're a turtle. No,
it's more like a snake. We're going to call it a snake or something. I don't know.
It's more like a stretched out camel's hump.
Yeah,
right?
Camel's hump. We call it.
But the middle of the camel's hump's either end.
Yeah. So pretty good stuff. But the thing about it is that manifold. Now here's the cool part. And I haven't put this in a video yet, but I probably will. Greg had a dyno mule there. It was a 383, had the same exact heads. The camshaft was pretty close,
similar, yeah.
Very similar, but he had a modified tune port fuel injection intake with the ported runners. It was top notch. Anyways, This single plane intake only gave up 12 foot-pounds of torque down low to that tune port.
Yeah.
So find me another dual plane that will do that.
Yeah. Now, we have to say, and Andy and I were talking about this earlier on, how many people have built an engine with the tune port injection because it looks so slick, and it does,
Mm-hmm.
and the results have not reflected the capability of a tune port.
Yeah.
We can tell you why it didn't, and we're going to do that for Ford and Chevy.
Yeah.
Now, we've just got a tuned port Chevy manifold in,
Yeah.
which I said to Andy beforehand, we should build a 383 in case motor.
Yeah.
That's in case we buy a truck to put it in. Right?
Yeah, we've been talking about
use
that.
the tune port on it for two reasons. One, it tunes in at a length very suitable for a truck, a towing truck.
Yeah, very low
And
RPM.
two, when they're all dressed up,
They look
they
really sharp.
sure do look slick, don't they?
Yeah. In fact, if you go over to Charlie's channel right here, he's actually got some video of tune port porting that he's doing right now, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact, that I seen yesterday. Okay.
What's that, Charlie, on your head? I wish you would
Yeah,
keep on
right here.
giving us working on the TPI project now. Right, okay. No, that wasn't the question I asked. What was the project where we ground on a cast iron manifold? It's all in black and white because I did this 30 years ago.
Yeah. Here's a question. Would you run a 460 big block Ford at 700 to 800 horsepower, revving at 7,500 using a stock crank? Probably not that high. Would you recommend changing it to a flat plane? At that power level, no.
No, you're going to have a lot of balance troubles for the stroke and all that.
Yeah.
If you change to a flat plane crank, you have to change so much other stuff for it.
It's not worth it.
It only becomes a factor if you start from scratch and you've got a budget that looks like a telephone number.
Yeah. And I can tell you that the big block Ford cranks, they're strong as an ox. They will hold at that power level, but I don't know if I would turn it. If in order to make that kind of power, you really don't need to turn it that high anyways, because you already have the cubic inches to do it.
Yeah. You can make a very hot, heavy duty grunter.
Yeah.
Right? It'll grunt its way out of anything.
Dakota's timeout. Howdy, folks. Peter here says, David.
Charlie, it was sometime about July last year in PowerTec 10.
Yeah. Says you wrote the Bible on tuning my 1275 A series motor. This guy's the real deal. You know a lot about A series engines, don't you?
A
thing or two.
I've forgotten a lot about it.
Let's see here. Stock 302.
You did an iron quadrajet intake in.
Let's see.
Go back. You did an iron quadrajet intake in one of your books. Had a 1/2-inch spacer and machine plenum divider. Yeah, that I did it in one of my books. Can't remember which one, right? But I also did it on a video last year. Cost of doing this in grindstones and cutters. No, you only use up grindstones. Cutters would probably be in $20. And if you're running a class which says you have to use a stock iron manifold, this is the way to do it. You'll have foot-pounds off the corners like you wouldn't believe. And it still uses a stock quadrajet. It still uses a quadrajet. It doesn't have to be a stock one.
So getting back to my dyno testing.
Yeah.
I had a lot of questions as why didn't I tune the carburetor to match the Edelbrock? Well, simple. I didn't have the metering rods there to tune it.
Yeah.
It was pretty much, this was a race-built quadrajet from Dean Oliver, which does all of the super stock quadrajets in NHRA for the most part.
Nicely built car.
Right? Very nicely built.
Now, the thing is that it was running a bit rich for our application.
Yeah.
Right. But
He got it
Dean doesn't do these very often.
not for this type application.
No. So I bet if he put that on a 350 racer,
oh yeah,
it'd have probably been right on the money. However,
we gave him all the specs,
Yeah.
and it was just like a guess in the dark,
Yeah.
and he come up really good.
yeah, he did. Give the guy credit there. So we're hanging on to that carburetor.
You got
I'm gonna
that right.
Try it with different hangers in there, and I'm going to make a bet. It's going to pick up power.
Absolutely.
Right? I don't think we've plumbed that thing into its depth yet.
No.
However, we did run out of dyno time, didn't you?
That's
always the problem.
When you're doing dyno time, okay, let me explain how this works. By the time you go in there and you get the engine docked up on the dyno and you break the engine in, you've already used up about four hours easy, like that. And then you're trying to squeeze as much testing as you possibly can. And it's almost like time stands still for you, and the clock speeds up 3 times as fast. And so I could be in a dyno room for what would seem like 10 minutes to me, and it would
be more like an hour.
And then more like an hour. That's just the way it is. So, but
it's like when I was in California and I had my own dyno, right? It was only about a mile from the house. And I was always late back for dinner at night. Why? Because I just didn't realize that it got dark outside.
That's true. That's just the way it goes.
Let me tell you something, guys. If you ever got money and you think dyno's going to, if you're in business and you think the dyno's going to make you money, think twice. They're so much fun to play on that you will find that you make less money with the dyno. You may be smarter for having it, but not richer.
Right.
But you will be happier. Time spent on a dyno is quality time, isn't it? When you're researching.
Yeah. Charlie's saying he did an aluminum quadrijet sleeper manifold that beats nearly all dual planes. Yeah, I can believe that. Was that the ZZ4 type manifold, Charlie? When dynoing carbs, do you ever just run a 4-barrel on 2 barrels to fine-tune jetting before bringing in 4-barrel? I've done that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you got to be careful doing that. You have to understand what you're doing. It only counts, the jetting only counts when it's the 2 barrels you're tuning up to about 2/3 throttle.
Yeah.
There's this bit between.
There's a window.
Yeah. You've got to try and twist everything so that it transitions okay. Now, you have to be some fussy son of a bitch like me to worry about that, right? But hey,
I've done it and it works, but the thing about it is a lot of times the dynamics of the carburetor changes when you introduce the back 2 barrels. And so then you end up going back to the front and make changes anyways, depending on the intake.
It's all a question with the quadrijet. It's all a question of whether you want mileage or outright performance. If you could say, yes, I want mileage, but I will not worry about having it perfect at a certain range in the cruise. And that's usually you're going 100 miles an hour anyway, right? Then calibrating the back ones and then the front ones, all 4 together is fine, right? Now, and we said this before, just for reference, guys, because these quadrijets are getting hard to get.
Yeah.
Spread bore Holly, they're getting hard to get, but 2 of them together, you're more likely to find one or the other.
And I'd like to find a thermoquad. Honestly,
I haven't worked on one of those.
A Carter thermoquad, but finding one.
Yeah.
I'm weird like that. I love doing weird things.
Now, I had a friend in Tucson who had a thermoquad on his Chevy, right? And he had that thing driving like it was fuel injection. He was a dyno operator, by the way, and a pro stock driver.
Yeah.
Kevin.
So Landon here has a 650 VRS on his 68 429 Thunderjet.
What's a VRS?
That's the Edelbrock carburetor. that are done.
Ah.
So let me tell you a little bit about this dyno test. I have these carburetors here at the house that I'm going to put on Casper. The next day when we went back over to finish up our dyno testing on the 408, I threw the carburetor in the truck. I'm like, I just have to know what this thing will do out of the box. And lo and behold, now I will say this, that carburetor having annular boosters, that is a heated intake, and we still seen a really good gain in foot-pounds, which tells me that if the intake was cooled, it would have been even larger. The thing about using annular boosters is you have to have it on the right intake manifold for it to shine.
Yeah.
Tell them the story about when they went to Daytona to test annular boosters.
Right. I love this.
This is good stuff.
Yep. I was doing a lot of booster work for the carb shop in
Ontario.
That's right.
Yep.
What we did was we modified a whole bunch of different boosters. Well, you know, my shop had got a machine shop in there, and one of the things we did. No, it started off before that with Dave Braswell, right? Good old Dave. I've said this before.
He taught David and David taught me.
Dave Braswell was my #1 champ when it came to holy carburetors. That guy had the patience of Job to tell this English guy who knew his way around Weber's like a whatever, an SU carburetors, and a Holly looked like a. I thought it was a crude piece of junk, right? I mean, but you see, the thing is Dave knew what he was dealing with, and he knew how to take a carburetor which was very cost effective, and it did the job that it was supposed to do for the money. So engineering wise, it was a good compromise, and that's what engineering is all about. Knowing where to compromise. Dave would take this carburetor and he would apply the sophistication of a designer who worked at Weber.
Yeah.
To redesign the shortcomings of this carburetor as based on money, dollars spent per what you got.
Yeah, output.
To a carburetor which would deliver the best you could get for a race car that was going to win or lose big money.
So what happened when they went to Daytona in cool weather versus hot weather?
Well, this was several years later, right? When I was working with the carb shop, I had this experience with Dave with boosters and temperature, right? And atomization. So one of the things I did was we've got to find out which booster suits which heat range of manifold.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we found that for cooler weather, non-heated intake manifold on an engine that did not get over about 180 degrees, had a cooled intake manifold, no heat going to it, no special exhaust heat, air going under it, like a Victor.
Or a tunnel ram.
Or a tunnel ram, yeah. That in cooler weather, the annular discharge booster worked best because it had and then you get these people saying, no, it blocks the Venturi. No, it doesn't. It flows just as well. The Venturi, the booster ends just at the smallest part of the Venturi, and that's a knife edge. So it doesn't matter whether it's a big, long knife edge or a small knife edge. There's no area there.
Right.
Right. So what happened was somehow or other, the information there got leaked out to a cup car team that was up north. And they tried these annular discharge boosters in the engine that they were testing for Daytona.
Mm-hmm.
They picked up something like 16 or 17 horsepower. Now remember,
that's a huge
Daytona
gain.
engines are restricted.
Right.
right? So they knew that, and they were one of the front running teams. So they went down to Daytona, right? Now, I didn't know anything about this at the time it happened. If they'd have called me up, I'd have said, no, that would be a mistake, because you got down there, went out to qualify, full of the joys of spring. They qualified way down the field. I mean, at Daytona, it's that much difference.
Minute.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they, instead of qualifying like in the front two rows, which they fully expected to, if not on the front row, they were 6, 7 rows back. And it's like, or at the time they would have been, right? So out of sheer desperation, they said, put the old carburetor back on with the regular boosters.
Yeah.
Guess what? They qualified on the second row.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Here's the thing. They dynoed in the cold weather. Right? It was outside, it was literally below freezing.
Yep.
When they got to Daytona, it was a particularly hot Daytona. 75, 80 degrees. So the vaporization of the two carburetors was totally different. And what was happening is the Andy, give me a hand.
The
annular discharge booster,
yeah,
was atomizing the fuel so much, a lot of it vaporized. Now, when it vaporizes, it takes up more room. So it displaces air that could have come in. So that what they did was they had a very nice running engine, but the VE had dropped because of the vaporization of the fuel. Result, less horsepower. Great brake-specific fuel consumption, less horsepower.
And pretty much they made a poor man's restrictor plate out of a carburetor.
Yeah.
You know, basically.
Right. Now,
the step down
is the most, the most, what's the word I'm looking for here? Versatile.
Yeah.
Right. The most versatile booster is almost certainly the stepped dogleg booster.
Yeah.
If in doubt,
yeah,
use a stepped dogleg booster carburetor. Right.
It's the best compromise of them.
Yep. It's a good all-weather carburetor.
But there's a reason why, like Tunnel Ram Mafia, I'm all about the annular boosters. Going to make best power.
Yeah. Now that's because tunnel rams tend to run cooler.
A lot cooler.
Yep. And of course, the other thing is since tunnel rams tend to come up to the hood area, it's easy to draw air off the hood, and that keeps them cooler. Now, I also did something on fuel temperature. Right, you got the booster you have to run or need to run for optimal conditions also depends on fuel temperature. If you start cool can, I did a video on cool cans. Charlie, what's the one on cool cans? And explained how when we put the fuel through a cool can with dry ice in it, even with a stepped dogleg booster, it dropped the horsepower.
Yeah.
Right. The booster. Yeah. We lost with the stepped dogleg booster and the cooler fuel. We lost power. When we put the dogleg on, we picked up the power again and improved it. So the temperature of the fuel
plays
is
a
factor. So this business about going out and winning races is not as easy as it looks. So if you don't do your homework.
Oh yeah.
You don't.
That's why you try things to see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Robert's asking the best non-HO 302 cam out there, non-flat tappet to make over 400 horsepower in a 306. How come you don't want to use the HO firing order? Because you have a lot more cam selection that way.
And let's hear what compression you're going to run.
Man, I'm way behind into. Oh Lord.
eBay, well, eBay has a new Quadrajet clones for $215.
Yeah, they're
Are they
China,
Chinese or Japanese? We'll have to look into that.
Chinese.
Reed DV's column took over talking CC. God, Jesus Christ, in the 70s.
Wow. USA's gain is England's loss.
Well, I was once told that I was part of the brain drain, but the guy was a friend of mine. He'd say anything.
Yeah. Okay. Now this leads into another issue. Joe here saying he found the ignition test back to back far more interesting than the carb test. So David and I have been talking about this in great deal about the Davis unified ignition versus the progressive ignition. I have a theory as to what's happening on the dyno. Now, I'm not standing in there on the dyno at 6,000 RPM watching to make sure that the timing is still at 34 degrees.
Yeah.
I can tell you when we set it at 4,000 RPM, 34 degrees, rock solid. So David here has a distributor machine.
A homemade wooden one.
So what I think I'm going to do for a future video is that use that same distributor, mock it up, run it at the same RPM to represent 57, 5,800 RPMs and see if the timing is actually backing up. Because I know from my personal experience with mechanical advance, a lot of times you will get bouncing back off of the advance and it will actually retard timing as RPM goes up.
Yeah.
I want to verify that that engine
is doing what it's supposed to do.
The distributor is holding 34 degrees at that RPM.
Now, we've got to do this in 2 steps.
Yeah.
The first step is to do it on our distributor machine to show that it is capable. The second one is to do it on an engine because I've had situations
vibrations.
Yeah, exactly. You've been
harmonics
breathing down that road.
Yeah.
The crank damper has called distributor chatter.
Yeah.
Or distributor scatter, timing scatter.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and that's another, I mean, that's a huge point. And because realistically, in my opinion, and that you take this for what it's worth, I really don't think that they should have been at least a 7 horsepower difference between the two.
Unless there was some reason that the spark was different.
Right.
Right.
So
but we'll look into that. Now, can I make a point here on the DUI, Davis Unified Ignition?
Yeah.
Now, I have been using DUI distributors since the current boss was in diapers.
A long time.
Yeah.
It's a great distributor.
I know the family. They are so, how shall I say, conscious of making sure they have satisfied customers that overrules making money. Right. I don't know how many distributors I've had from DUI. Every single one has functioned just as they're supposed to.
Absolutely.
Right. They are, I got to stop saying right. They are amongst the best buys for distributors. Sure, you can buy cheaper ones. And most of the time they're okay. I can't afford most of the time. I have to have almost dead certainty. When I go on a dyno, it's usually followed by a copy date, right? That is not something I can screw around with. It's got to be done. Now, running our own publishing house here, I've got some flexibility, but
still very low.
I guess over years of having to meet deadlines, it's something that I find that I do. If I don't meet a deadline, I feel bad about it. Right. But very often, a third party will screw things up for you.
Yeah. So what do you think about the progression ignition?
I'm putting one of those on the next motor. What have I got already on it? I've got a DUI distributor that I've had for years now that I've used in my dyno mule motors of the kind of spec that we're going to put it in.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's done that many miles. I mean, a lot of dyno time, but I would say probably the equivalent of about 20,000 miles. But
probably.
Here's the deal. it always delivers a big fat spark.
Yeah.
And I know how to tweak the dyno curve,
Yeah.
right? Vacuum curves and all that, if I need to. For street motors, if you're not running a vacuum can on there,
You're losing.
You're losing
You're
miles
losing.
per gallon and drivability.
Javier says, trying to buy your IOP program, web address is not available.
Oh, we've got to start a new website, right?
Yeah.
Look, guys, it looks like we're falling back on the job here. We have had so much testing to do and so many things, positive things happen that the website, and of course the negative thing, Marvin passed away.
That's right.
Marvin, now I know a lot of you will remember Marvin, right? I knew I had a good partner, but he was even better than that. That guy picked up the reins for me far more than I understood until he wasn't there. I've had two partners in my life. Well, Andy's the third.
Yeah.
There's but two serious partners in my life. Both of them were beyond reproach. And after things went awry with my first partner, we didn't fall out or anything. I became what was close to terminally ill, and he couldn't run the business by himself. But the thing is that I didn't think I'd get another partner like that.
Right.
Right. So I was very despondent. Anyway, we're still best of friends for today, from today. And we were friends from when he was 17 and I was 20.
Wow.
Right.
So
what's that,
BNR
61 years.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Mike.
So BNR saying that MSD pulls timing back people found at high RPMs, HEI ignition modules all have what is known as expanded dwell time. And that's true. But I want to find out if it's dwell time or if it's actually mechanical. So I want to chase that rabbit down the hole and find out which one it is. Robert saying, David, isn't it nice not to be under the thumb of editors and publishers trying to appease advertisers instead of giving readers the information they really need?
Yes. Now, certain editors I wouldn't write for because two things. They would insist that the person or company I was writing for should pay me. No. And secondly, if it didn't say what they thought the company would want it to say, they wouldn't publish it.
Yeah.
No. Right. I could have been a very wealthy person if I'd have taken bribes.
Yeah.
It is not going to happen. I need to be able to look in the mirror in the morning and say, I have been honest.
Yep. And I want to be able to sleep good at night.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is.
Let me make this one more point, Andy. I am not here for the editor's sake. I have made it very clear that my number one concern is the reader, or in your case, the viewer. Right? That's who I work for. Think about this, guys. I don't work for the magazines. I work for you.
That's the way we view it.
Yeah. Yep.
And the thing about it is, if a product that we are working with is good, we're going to promote it.
Yeah.
If it sucks, we're going to let them know.
Here's a product that we need to promote.
What's that?
Last time we were on, we had Reverend Evan on.
Yes. Talking about editors.
He wanted to make his 50,000 circulation. Now, I worked for Evan for what we can't actually figure out how long it was, 10, 15 years at least.
Yeah.
Right. And he's one of those editors and I wrote for him pretty regularly. I mean, probably 10 times a year. And all those years I worked for him, the guy was straight as a die, just like Jeff Smith.
Yeah.
Jeff Smith.
Great guy.
Yep. Jeff Smith is a guy whose honesty and integrity is something to look up to, right? I once said to him, Jeff, you remind me of a dyed-in-the-wool Marine. And he said, funny about that. That's what my dad was. And he says, boy, you sure inherited it from him, right? A Marine does his duty, does the right thing.
Yep.
Right?
When no one's looking.
Evan is one of those guys that's just a plain pleasure to work for, just like Jeff. They're short on the list. Guys, we asked you to subscribe to Reverend Evan because he was wanted to get to 50,000.
He got
just checked to the number 51,000.
So
boys,
y'all did it. Congratulations,
got
y'all.
there. Now, if you're watching this and you didn't watch the other one, look at the work he does.
He had some awesome stories.
Presentation was awesome, wasn't it?
It really was.
The standard of his publications is Hot Rod Standard. The standard of his information is Reverend Evan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Go and stick your finger on the button. You
won't be sorry. If you're a Ford guy, you definitely need to subscribe to that channel.
He's got, and his artwork, his photographs and all that.
Oh, unreal.
They are absolutely top notch, aren't they?
So talking about this Project Sleeper, the 408, Joe Davis here, that is his engine and his Chevelle. And you can see that stuff on my channel. Go look up. I got a whole playlist. So how's it going, Joe? We was talking about your engine earlier. Joe in Michigan says, I love how LS3 heads prove David's theories with head flow. Can't wait to see what New Can does in that truck. Jeff Smith was always my favorite in Carcraft. Absolutely. Jeff Smith had some excellent technical articles, you know. Well,
Jeff Smith's just a totally decent guy.
Yeah. And the new camshaft, we were talking about that before we went live for the LS3 motor. Yeah. We're working on getting that ground, and hopefully we'll see some results with that here sometime soon.
You know, we need to talk to the guys at B&R Racing, right? I got a feeling that they would make good article material to.
Yeah, it needs to make it about B&R.
Yeah, B&R. Email me.
Yeah,
right.
The email's in this chat if you look it up.
Yeah. Let's look and see what you guys are doing there, right? I have a sneaky suspicion we could learn something from you.
See, this is the key. Joe's saying he's been subscribed for Evan for a long time, and he's not a Ford guy. Loves all NA engines, and that's the thing about Evan. Like, you can take the information that you learn from his channel and apply it pretty much universally. I mean,
yeah. And but he's very much a car guy.
He's diehard car guy.
If you've got a beautiful car, he's in love with it.
And you really need to check that live chat out because he has an awesome story about flying in a P-51 Mustang with Jack Roush.
Yeah. And Jack didn't crash that time.
No. Let's see here. So what have we got on the hot plate? I know we've got a lot of things with your car, my carburetors, trying to keep all of our projects straight. The 318, I'm supposed to be going to pick up the block from just Mopar Joe here in the next couple weeks.
Yep.
He's in Arkansas, so I'm having to drive there. Arkansas.
Right. I always wonder why I got one state more than everybody else when I was a kid.
So
there's Arkansas, and then somewhere else there's Arkansas.
And I have to give a huge shout out to Jeff at Two Hacks Garage because he's actually donated some parts for us for the 318 project.
Yeah.
An ignition system and headers. So
right.
So that's good stuff.
That means I got to get the sandblaster up and working again, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right. We've worn out the gun on the sandblaster and the air compressor's wearing out.
Yeah, we wear out stuff around here.
Yeah.
Does Mr. Vizard believe in electric cars and trucks or the future or just overhyped?
Here's the deal, right? I think first off, you got to ride in a high output electric car, and then you don't give a shit how it's powered. You just want that kind of performance. You look how fast these Teslas go.
Mm-hmm.
They're Well, I watched. What's his name with?
Talking about Jay Leno and the
No.
Plaid.
The guy that smokes the tires that got killed last year.
Ken Blanc.
Yes, Ken Block. This is brain fade. It's not that these people are trivial. It's that my memory doesn't work as well as it did. And his daughter, his 14-year-old daughter, was driving the Hoonigan.
Yeah, Hoonigan.
Right. And she did a great job, right? But she was racing a very, very slightly lightened Tesla.
Yeah.
Plaid. And well, sure, the Hoonigan beat it.
Yeah.
But the Tesla's got air conditioning on it and cup holders, and this is quiet. It's like a Rolls Royce inside, had all the interior in there. And it probably cost less than the Hoonigan to build as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
145 grand.
Yeah, something.
I reckon they're worth every cent of that.
Yeah.
Well, no, maybe 144,990.
Still, it's more money than I will ever spend on a car.
Now, I have a friend of mine who's got the model down from that, and I had to go in that, and
it's still fast.
Goodness, it's like you can almost get your eyeballs hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
Right? And the point is this: you don't hear anything. So if you want real transport, that's the way to go. Now, here are the problems. Right? They're not without problems. One, the electricity that they're using to charge the batteries is still coming from a system that generates a lot of pollution.
Yes.
Right? We've got to get electrical generation cleaner.
Yes.
Secondly, I can't manage with a car with only 300 miles range. If they had a reasonable priced electric car that had got a 425 mile range, I could manage with it to drive there and back, right? Because I've got this deal where I now put a 500 mile range limit on my daily drive, right? If it's 501, I'm going to stop at a motel and drive the other one.
Yeah.
Now, why 450? Because that's less. Well, the thing is in that 450 miles, I am going to stop to get something to eat.
Yeah.
For an hour, plug it in, go and eat. Right. So basically, I've got to be in lack of convenience, not inconvenienced for a 500 mile trip. Now, as far as economy is concerned, even that Tesla's doing, I think it's the equivalent of 70 to the gallon, but the cheaper cars out there, and the one that Tesla are going to come out with, I have heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that it does the equivalent to 100 miles per gallon.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's good. Now, batteries are a problem, right? We still got this issue with batteries, which finally will fail, and they are poisonous to make.
Yes.
So we really need to move into the battery. It's the electric car is fine. It's the generation and the delivering of the energy.
Right.
Right. We're getting the planet dirty, getting the energy, and we're getting the planet dirty, storing it.
Yeah.
So, but those points will be overcome.
At some point.
At some point. I don't think we've reached the point of solving the battery and the generation deal for another 10 years. But we have reached a point in proving that electric cars are certainly very nice to drive and can be an incredible amount of fun. So, yes, I think the electric car will be there. I just don't want to see an electric pro stock car or electric top fuel car.
Who wants to see that?
No, I don't mind. I don't mind having a Tesla that will run with a pro stock car, but I want to do that on the road.
The thing about it is, when you go to the drag races, it's about the smell, it's about the sound, it's about the vibration, it's about all of the different sensory aspects versus just watching a silent car go down the track.
Yeah.
That is so boring to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be fun under certain circumstances.
Yeah, if I'm the one driving the car, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a program last night where a Tesla easily outrun one of those Swedish, Danish cars.
I have no idea, but
It was, I don't know, it was about $1 million car. Right?
oh, look who's in
cylinder.
here. Thomas is
Thomas. Hey, Thomas.
You're going to be seeing a video on your cylinder head sometime soon.
Yeah. I still got the exhaust, the intake seats to cut. Right. But I told you that this afternoon.
Yeah, it's looking really good, though. That's going to be...
Robert.
Where?
There. I had a question for you, and if it wasn't for the fact that I was up to my ass in alligators, I would have called you. Guys, I'm on a tire bid. Remember when we did the transmission thing? One of the things we found was our Goodyear tires.
Or Continentals.
Close.
Close.
Yeah, they're
Not
both
quite.
tires. Our Continentals, which everybody who's driven on them has loved them, right? No more noise in stock. The ride is the same as stock, and the grip is much better, right? Just about the same on the dry as the Michelins, but they're about $70 a top piece cheaper. Good tire for the money. So I want to emphasize that. But we have now got to the point with my Mustang where unless the track is just crispy clean
and the temperature is exactly right,
we're going to get wheel spin.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is get some tires, which will do. Now, I was talking to Robert, and he does road course events, and he is currently testing some new tires of a brand I can't believe I've never even heard of.
What are they?
I can't remember. It's not something that rolls off my tongue. So I'm waiting for Robert to finish these tests. And this is a street drivable race tire. Right? Now, of course, it won't last as long on the street as a lot of other street tires, but it grips better than your top running tire, which is the Michelin, wet and dry. And I guess the Continental is probably about second place.
Yeah.
And he said on a road course, this new tire outruns it, and it's street drivable. Now,
is this it right here?
What is it? A Vitor P1. Right. Robert, have you actually tested them yet, or is that this weekend or something?
So while we're waiting on him, I posted on my community page earlier today. A fellow racer lost out.
We're going to get back to Bobby Belcher in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A fellow racer, the Nelsons, Andrew Nelson, had his car and truck trailer stolen in South Carolina. So go watch that video. And if you have seen that car, that truck, or that trailer, make sure you notify the police and let them know, because he was on his way to an event, stayed the night at a hotel, come outside, the truck, trailer, car, everything gone. And I shared the video on my channel, so go check it out.
What was that?
Today. It happened this morning. So go put the word out on that. And we would really appreciate that, because anytime something like that happens, it's horrible, you know. Bobby Belcher, hydrogen-powered engines are the future for a clean-burning internal combustion engine.
Yes, but the internal combustion engine right there is the problem. They're so complicated. The electric motor is much easier to make.
And when you come down to it, these auto manufacturers are looking at dollars and cents
with what they've got invested.
With what they've got invested, you know.
Now, this is something that Andy has had a lot of experience with. Current technology with internal combustion engines and electric motor technology with possible coming developments on that. And he's had to try and work the two between here.
Yeah.
As
in my industry.
Yeah, and this is in the big truck industry, right? Part of his work function has been to blend the transition point so that it goes smoothly and doesn't screw up one industry for the sake of another one.
Right.
Right. Complicated. We won't go into that. And
Yeah.
You'll probably lose sleep over
Well,
it.
and the thing about it is, even in my industry, we're looking at, we're going to be producing gasoline powered engines. Cummins is developing a gasoline powered engine because of the new upcoming diesel emissions in 2027. So,
they're going to be,
yeah,
they're going to be looking at turbo motors for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
which may actually be a good thing.
Could be. Nivolac 57. That's exactly right. The stolen vehicles was taken from them. Yep.
That's the team name, is it?
Yeah, that's the YouTube channel's name. Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, that right there, that's horrible. I mean, I have no respect for someone does stupid stuff like that, man.
Respect for dishonest people anyway.
Disgust is more what I have.
Right. Sometimes I get a little bothered about humanity.
Yeah.
I got this feeling if we're not alone in the universe and an alien turns up and they're going to look at us and say, you know what? They're not very moral creatures.
No.
Let's go off somewhere else.
Yeah. Could we hear your thoughts on pros and cons of direct injection engines for street and strip? Luke asked.
Yes, you can. Next question.
Let's see here. So, what do you think about direct injection? Since you have one.
Yeah. Do I like them? Yes and no. There are disadvantages to it and there are advantages. I tend not to dwell on disadvantages too much for the simple reason that a lot of cars I get are project cars. They never do very many miles. Like my Mustang, I've got 2,400 miles on it, I think, and I've owned it for a year.
And all of those miles have been
going to the racetrack.
And all of those miles have been hard miles. I might add.
No. All of the miles have either been driven gently, i.e. on the road.
Oh, yeah.
Or you get to the racetrack
Wide
and they've
open.
been driven.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So, yes.
Robert's asking, what size tires do you need? We will have to get with you on that.
I think 295, 30, 18.
18s.
Right.
Okay.
Now, according to my experience, Robert, I've got a question for you here. Right. I noticed you've got 11-inch wheels on your Mustang and you're using, was it 305 or 3015?
315s probably.
Right. And my experience is that if you've got 11-inch wheel, the 305 is about right. And I'm likely to be getting some 10.5 Ohan wheels. They're like the ones I've got. I'm very pleased with them. Right. They are really nice looking wheels. They are light as you can get for a aluminum wheel, right? They're as light as a lot of race weight, so-called race weight wheels. They look good. I've had nothing but nice compliments on them. And I worked out that a 295 tire should be about perfect.
Yeah. He's saying he's running a 315 30 18 on an 1811.
Yeah, I was right. I knew it was a 305 or 315.
Yeah.
Right, the 18-inch wheel. Now, Robert's running these wheels on his car. This is a guy that's very competitive with a 2.5 turbo EcoBoost, right? He has to race heads up on road courses against guys with V8s.
Yeah.
He mostly beats them.
What about dual injection? That's the best of both worlds.
Yeah. That's what back in 1989 on the Dave Mountune Cosworth Sierras, we used injectors in the airbox and injectors in the manifold. The injectors squirting down the barrels in the airbox were for the big power, right? That's where the F1 cars were squirting them in at the top. Gives the most time for the fuel to break up.
Yep.
Right? Needs to be broken up.
And you get charge cooling too.
Well, you do get charge cooling, but how many engines actually utilize that charge cooling?
Probably not many.
They're not utilizing it as well as they could because they've not quite got the process that's going on down in mind. Temperature cooling an engine gets very involved.
Yes.
Andy will bear with that.
Yeah.
It gets very involved. When you want to find out everything there is about charge cooling, it isn't just
it's a never ending subject, really.
Goes round in circles. You get one thing done, then you find that is a knock-on effect on this, and then that's
a domino effect.
If here's your target for temperature effectiveness, and here's where you start, it does not go down like this. It goes like this, right? And you keep on hopefully getting closer. Sometimes you go like this, right? And by the time you get there, you think, what's that 2 years worth it all?
Exactly.
We could have bored the engine oversized and just stroked it.
Yeah.
Now, where was I on that?
Let's see here.
Tire size. Yeah. What size do I need, Robert? I think I'm looking for 295 30 18s. Oh yeah, the wheel.
Yeah, the O&Ms.
Right? The O&M wheel. Guys, don't be in too much of a rush to go to 19-inch wheels or 20-inch wheels. Here's the downside. Sure, you may get a bigger tire and that, but you also get more unsprung weight. And you need bigger brakes to put the same retardation force at the edge of the tire. Right? So going with slightly smaller wheels means you can get away with slightly smaller brakes. None of you are going to be doing races. Well, almost none of you are going to be doing races that would typically wear your tires out in one race. So I'm sticking with the 18-inch wheels on mine because I can lower the car by an inch so I don't upset the suspension geometry, and B, there's all this talk about if you lower a Mustang by the 551s by an inch, you've got to do all your bump steer and all that. And I thought, wait a minute. If the suspension doesn't have bump steer now, and we lower an inch by dropping the shocks, we've still got the same geometry. Right? So within that range, we shouldn't have altered the bump steer. Now, I talked to Robert about this, and he said he found no difference in the road holding and handling with the car dropped an inch and no correction for the bump stop. 1 inch spacer, right? So since the guy's winning races, and beating engines which are much bigger than his car makes around about 400 and something at the wheels. He's racing guys who've got 700.
Yeah.
And he puts them away.
You know why? Because he has the better combination.
He's got the combination that holds the road best.
That's right.
Right? He's not beating them down the straight. Look, I was a road racer for many, many years. Let me tell you something. The engine's about a third order effect. It's not down to the engine.
Yeah.
Braking, handling, and cornering absolutely roll over horsepower. Now, I don't mean to say you can go out there with a stock engine. No. You do not need to spend a fortune on an engine. If you've got 90% of the power that the guy who's up front's got, you will find that you will probably be only a couple of cars behind him because all of the other guys have spent their money on engines, right?
Yeah.
And not on suspension. So always think about that. Brakes, suspension, and handling come first. A decent motor, not an exceptional one, a decent motor will get the job done. Also, it's more reliable you may win a championship because the guy who's
Pushing
does
his
beat you
equipment.
blows it up once in a while. I've never seen a suspension system blow up.
No.
Right? You put them together, as long as you don't curb them
That's
too
right.
badly, they're there.
So Jacob, he's asking me at 7.3 Godzilla versus 6.2 single overhead cam. We were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Which is better as far as valve configuration?
Well, the 6.2 has got brilliant valve configuration.
Yes.
Right?
And
but the 7.3 is also a pretty stout motor.
so here's the deal. David and I have done work on a 6.2 head a few years back.
Yep.
That cylinder head started out roughly 320 CFM. We cleaned it up, did a basic bowl job, did some stuff to it, got it up over 360 CFM, just like that.
Yeah.
So
nothing to it, was there?
Nothing to it. Now, the Godzilla, we decided to put the 6.2 on the back burner, and there was a reason for that, is because, yes, we could run that engine, but getting custom ground camshafts that no one has cores for, intake manifold, header selection, the engine is physically bigger. So when the opportunity came for us to get 7.3 Godzilla, that's what we wound up doing. We actually have 2 Godzillas over at my buddy's shop, Micah's. I'm getting ready to yank the cylinder heads off of one of them, bring them over here and do some flow bench testing. And that way we would actually have kind of like an apples to apples comparison between what that cylinder head is starting out bone stock versus the 6.2, and then we can compare it maybe even to the LS3 stuff that we're working with. So, but here's the thing. We got to get into a list of priorities with our projects. And, one of them being, David's got his Mustang. It's getting summertime. We've got Thomas's 2.3 head. We got done, almost done. We have a few other projects. We've got the 318 project that we're doing.
Yep.
I've got my
We've
truck.
got my polyquad heads. Oh,
we've got a lot of things.
You get cooling and evaporation at the same time, and it works against it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
You got it.
You have appreciated something there that so many people miss.
They overlook it.
Yep.
And it's a balancing act.
Yep.
It's delicate.
That's right.
But so, yeah, you will be seeing 7.3 Godzilla content coming up on David's channel and my channel. We were talking
about that just before it started. You were going to pull the head off like soon.
Yeah, soon. Micah might already have it off by now, but
yeah.
Thank you, Steve, for the happy birthday. Let's see here.
Winging it, Tracy. Right. What are you winging at the moment, Tracy?
Oh, you got a super chat. Let's see. Whoa. Super chat. Donald here. David and I love your channels. I'm building a 10.5-to-1 351 Winger, street only, 56 F100. That is awesome. Recommendations for spec and grind of a cam.
You can't just do the recommendation without me knowing all there is to do it.
Yeah.
Right? I leave guessing cams to cam companies, right? I compute the cam. And a 10.5 351 is something that can be anything.
What cylinder heads is on?
Yeah, I mean
valve sizes, the
valve sizes,
intake
capability,
all of that.
The intakes you've got, what intake manifold, what you want to do it for, where you want peak power, etc., etc.
So put all of that stuff in there, and
what rockers you think you want.
Yeah. Luke, are you going to run water injection on the Mustang?
Oh, hell yes.
We've already...
We're actually, I don't know, this might be project 654.
Yeah.
We've actually come up with a water injection system.
It's going to be slick.
Calibrating.
Slick.
And if a company buys it up, it could probably go out the door for $120.
So Bobby is asking, what is the goal in ET with the Mustang? So I'm assuming that
Well,
he's talking about
yeah,
yours.
Yeah. By the end of this year, or maybe at worst, the beginning of next year, I hope to be at around 500 rear wheel horsepower. Right. So, Andy, what do you think 500 rear wheel horsepower do?
We should be
Also, I'm
mid-tens.
figuring about 150 pounds lighter.
Yeah, we should be definitely into tens with that.
Right. And it's still going to be
Which will be
still going to be a road racer and a road car, not a drag car.
Yeah, it's going to be well balanced. It'll probably go 6s in the 8th mile pretty easy. So that's the goal. If we can get it to go 699.
So what's that?
That is very close to being in the 10s. That's a 1099. So if we can be in the 10 somewhere,
yeah,
and be, 6s,
Yeah.
8th mile, and still be able to drive it on the street, have street manners.
Yep. And pass emissions. Right. Gotta go through emissions.
And then let's
And
go
my wife's got to be able to drive this car to work.
Yeah.
It's got to be quiet, right? It's got to look innocuous. God, where did I get that word from?
Innocuous.
Yeah, what does it mean?
I don't know. That sounded good.
But yeah, it sounds like I know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Robert Sentner, see if we can sweet talk. They're in the smoking deal instead of Whisper Pony. They run the GT 350 brakes. That is cool. And the GT Brembo 6-piston brakes on the front. That's a good combination.
Now, wait a minute. Wind speed shot.
Yeah.
Speed stop. Haven't we talked to that guy?
I think so.
Yeah, he had some good stuff to say.
He did.
And again,
but that's been like a few months ago that we did it.
That's been almost a year ago.
Oh, has it been that long now?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty cool stuff.
Oh, Robert, just as a reminder, you getting that video for me. You got this pretty looking dangerous Mustang that we want to show people what a 2.3 can do, and you're the man to do it. Right? So work on that film, that video. So, I don't want to have to come down there and get Andy to beat the crap out of you,
Yeah, whatever. Ron Ward is in the house. Happy belated birthday, Andy. Thank you so much, Ron. Ron is the official announcer of the No Name Nationals, I might add.
I was going to say, where do I know that name?
He has been all over the country as far as announcing for drag racing. Top-notch guy.
Where is he?
Well, he's right here right now. I don't know. Where are you from, Ron? It's got to be somewhere around Tennessee, I would imagine. So, here you go. Here's your definition. Innocuous equals harmless. If you say so, Josh, I don't know.
Okay,
he's from Topeka, Kansas.
If I was good at spelling and grammar, I'd be a writer.
Yeah. But Ron is an awesome dude. I got to meet him 2 years back at the No Name Nationals. He is coming back again. For those of you who are in the chat that may not know, the No Name Nationals is coming up at the end of September. It's a YouTube creators race. Hopefully David will be there racing.
Yeah, and
I'll be there with Casper.
Last year, what medical disaster was I in the middle of?
You had the catheter, I think.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an operation just shortly after that. God damn it, I lost a lot of blood.
Yeah, it was bad. It was very bad.
Right now, I'm targeting to race the Mustang at the No Name Nationals. That is a good excuse for me to go, isn't it?
Right? That's right.
Now, here's the thing. Thomas, if you're still listening, great. Now, Thomas said he would put the Mustang, he's got a 2-car trailer. He would put the Mustang in his trailer and I could ride with him down there. So I don't have to drive there or back to the No Name Nationals. So I get there, I get to hang out in the bar, the hotel, and the racetrack, and don't worry about transportation.
There you go. And see, the thing about it is, Thomas's Mustang, 4-cylinder Mustang, that's going to be in the 5s, deep in the 5s. Okay.
This thing, if everything goes to plan, I mean,
it should be a mid 5-second car.
He's already made almost 750 at the wheels.
733 to be exact.
And we're hoping that
4-digit territory if we can get
That,
lucky.
with enough boost in it, water injection and all that stuff,
Yeah.
that we'll get close to 1,000, right?
And it's
we've been in the area of 1,000, nearly 1,200 horsepower at the wheels with a Mitsubishi Lancer from 2 liters. So we ought to be able to do 1,000 from 2.3.
I would think so. Never feared, Duckster is here. That is awesome. Josh said, thank God you got through it. Yeah, it was touch and go there for a little while with David, with his surgery, everything. He was in really bad health. And
when I go to hospital now, they say, oh, it's you again.
Yeah. But I have to say, you've been on a pretty good run here recently.
Yeah, I have. Good.
And you know what's awesome for me is getting to see him enjoy that EcoBoost Mustang. That brings me so much joy watching you go out there and have fun with that car.
Yeah, but I have to get you to drive it to get consistent results. Right. I think I need more seat time in my Mustang.
Yeah.
I've got to fit. Do you know what? You've probably driven it more miles.
I know I have.
Right.
Which is weird.
Well, wait a minute. I think at best I've got about 400 miles on it.
Yeah, I've driven his car more than he has.
You must have, and it's got 2,300.
You did drive it. You drove it to Terry's.
Yeah, but no,
you didn't.
I drove it there, and Josephine drove it back.
Oh, okay.
Or the other way around. I can't remember. So that was, I think, all told, it's way less than 1,000.
Yeah.
So you must have over 1,000 miles in it.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, 733 at the wheels, and this is in a Fox body Mustang that is full-on race car. So.
But it looks full on.
Yeah.
Not race car.
So, yeah. I'm telling you, this thing is wicked quick.
Yep.
Here's your question. Can you water inject with high compression?
Oh, you must water inject.
That's
you don't need it with low compression.
Yeah. High compression is where it shines.
Yep.
Because then you can run cheap gas in it.
Look, here's the thing. You need to. What's that story I did? The cheapest octane booster you can get? Go onto our channel and read the cheapest octane booster in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a really good video.
And it will explain it. We could have the 100 mile per gallon carburetor the 100 mile per gallon car easily if water injection was allowed in the scene. In fact, if anyone's at a college or school or university, and you want to build a car that will do 100 miles per gallon at highway speeds, I can tell you how it's done, and I will help oversee the project and probably can find sponsors for it.
Yeah. The Mustang is keeping DV young, more miles, more smiles. That's exactly right.
That is exactly right, Robert.
I mean, he's like a little kid when he gets in that car.
Well,
I love it. So wait a minute. Time out.
So's this guy, right? He's what? You're 65, didn't you say, Robert? 65 years old. He's like a kid playing with toys all day. This is all he does all day.
Yeah, but when you get in the car in the passenger side with David driving, and he's doing like 80 around this curvy road, and he's acting like it's nothing, and I'm like, oh dear God, let me out. But he's cool, calm, and collective. I mean,
I remember when
adrenaline. He doesn't produce adrenaline, folks.
I was doing an instruction deal at Silverstone. We used to do this. My friend Mike and I used to do this quite often. He's magic at car control, Mike. And what would happen is we'd pay the rent to rent Silverstone, which is not cheap, by announcing to all of our friends that we were going to run a school. Now, normally when you went to Silverstone school, it cost you a lot of money because you had to drive their cars. Well, we said, what we did was we would get an idea of how many were coming, and we'd split up the fee for each one, so it covered the rental of the track. And then, since we only ever took one car there, we had plenty of people to time it for us, but only one of us could drive it, either Mike or I. So what we would do was we would be instructors. And I remember trying to teach this one guy. He got an E-Type. And he kept on turning into the corners too soon, too soon, way too soon. It's like 100 yards too soon, so that he would make the corner into an exaggerated parabola.
Yeah.
Right. And finally, I'd say to him, look, let me take you around in the Mini, my 1000 Mini, right? This.
I know where this is going.
Right. So I said, belt yourself in, put all the belt on, plugging all that in, and off I went. Well, I did 2 laps.
And he was like,
He got out, threw up, got in his E-Type and drove off, and I've never seen him since.
there you go.
Right.
So Charlie here is asking, what is the octane rating of water?
Infinite. Right. Have you? Well, it is, so long as we don't get into such high temperatures that it disassociates.
Mhm.
Right. But for all practical purposes, it's infinite. So you can make 50 octane kerosene race worthy. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see here. Blah, 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 blah.
I mean, nitrous oxide. Whoa, go back.
That's what I was looking for.
What?
Nitrous oxide actually has an octane rating, I think.
No. Nitrous oxide won't burn by itself. It has no octane rating.
No.
You heard
can't
wrong.
burn. You have to have fuel to make it burn.
Yeah. Nitrous oxide is nitrogen and oxygen. There is no fuel content in that. You could, if you
could
were in
extinguish
a room,
fire.
if you were in a, yeah, that's right. If you were in a room that was completely nitrous oxide and you lit your propane lighter, it would be a miracle.
Yeah, it would put it out.
If it burned for more than half a second, I'd be amazed.
Yeah. Have you seen the 302 Maverick with a lawnmower carb? Complete success.
Yes.
Thunderhead 289. Thunderhead 289. Yeah.
No, wait a minute.
That's his YouTube channel. Is the guy that's got that car.
He's got a lawnmower carb on there.
Yeah.
Right. I doubt the performance is very good.
No, I think it made like 45 horsepower on the chassis down there with that carburetor.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad, but it was a running, driving car.
Yeah. If you have the right setup, for instance, this water injected engine that I want to build, let's say we did it on a Chevy, little 3-cylinder Chevy Metro.
Geo Metro.
Right. There is absolutely no reason why we still shouldn't have a 100-mile-an-hour car.
Yeah.
And do 100 miles per hour. Not at 100 miles an hour, but at street driving speeds. Right.
It might take a while to get to 100 miles an hour, but we can do it.
No, I don't think so. It's not, they're not that heavy.
No, they're not.
They're very good aerodynamically.
Well, it's an egg.
Yeah. And, this is a thing that amused me. A lot of people saying, why don't General Motors or the car companies over here make small cars? Well, they started to. The Geo Metro was one of them, and it was a very good car. They're tougher than hell, right? And as soon as the price came off gas, they couldn't sell a small car to save your life, right? So a lot of the gas crisis is caused by customer preferential.
That's right.
Customer preferences.
They drive the market, which in turn drives what comes down the pipe.
Those big Chevy SUVs, although they are an engineering work of art, and the Ford and the Chrysler, sure they have things wrong with them, but all in all, for the price, they are almost unbelievable. You couldn't sell them in Europe.
Yeah,
right.
You couldn't.
Gas is too expensive. Everybody says, well, why would you want a vehicle that big?
Look, if you really want a good example of this, take a full-size truck from the 1990s and compare it to the same full-size truck of today's. I mean, we're talking about a difference of nearly 2,000 pounds that they've added over the years.
Yeah.
And the vehicle's gotten bigger, and the fuel mileage has actually gotten worse. Now, granted, the power's gone up, but the performance is about the same. The weight and power.
These days, we have Corvette trucks.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, some of these trucks.
They are pretty fast. Some of them.
Yeah. I look back and at what an off the showroom floor Corvette did in 1975.
Oh, God, they're horrible.
Right. your typical 2000, your typical current diesel truck will outrun one.
Oh yeah, that's exactly
Whilst
right.
pulling a trailer.
Well, now you can go to the dealership and get a regular cab F-150 with a Coyote engine, put a supercharger on it, and go run 9s in the quarter mile with a bone stock truck with a supercharger. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
You know, that once upon, 15 years ago, that was pie in the sky stuff.
Yeah. Here's something that's interesting. I have on quite a few occasions heard people say, well, this was the golden age of muscle cars.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Back in the 70s.
No, it's now.
Muscle cars are all over the place now. They are so common that we don't refer to them as muscle cars anymore.
That's exactly
I
right.
look at some of the performance figures of a muscle car, the top muscle cars of 1969, 1970. I can obliterate them.
You could take
with my 30 miles per gallon Mustang.
take the Malibu and outrun some of them.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
No, I would if I had the turbo.
But what I'm saying is, like,
yeah,
back then, if you had a 13-second quarter-mile car, you were king of the hill. You know. So, Robert's asking, did you run the Edelbrock carbs on Casper? Great video on Edelbrock. So, I'm not going to give away too much of the secret because I have a video coming up on this. Let's just say I put up a short yesterday of the Edelbrock carburetors on Mixed Up Boss. I drove the truck and I was mesmerized. And I'm going to leave it at that. You'll have to watch the video because you have to remember I had Dominators that I had spent how much time on? Tremendous amount of time.
You were
I lived in carburetor world forever.
Yeah. And is a carburetor nut.
I am. I love him.
And he only needs the slightest provocation to think, wait a minute, did I detect a little flat spot there?
Yeah.
And he's into those carburetors. Now, he's good at it. He's done it lots of times. He understands how carburetors work. So he doesn't just dive into it. He dives in with a working knowledge of
each
this
circuit.
Problem. We need to look at this circuit.
Mm-hmm.
For that problem, we need to look at that circuit. For this problem, we need to adjust this circuit in conjunction with that one. Right? So, I mean,
yesterday my mind was blown. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that.
So when he tested that Edelbrock carburetor out of the box against his Dominators, we're not looking at a just casual Dominator versus whatever test. We're looking, I mean, I drove his truck before he got it to run as finely as it did.
Yeah.
And I thought it ran very well for a street drivable truck with two Dominators
on a tunnel ram, 700 horsepower.
Right. And it was totally street drivable.
Yeah.
Now he's saying that with the new carburetors on, the throttle response is better. The drivability just off idle is better.
I wouldn't have any problem with my wife driving this truck now.
Yeah.
And that's a huge statement. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because before, the throttle was kind of like an on-off switch, and you had to know how to modulate the throttle.
You have to have experience.
Yeah, because if not, you could be looking in the ditch really quick. But
it displayed the characteristics of a 700 horsepower truck.
Yeah.
Right. But it did very well considering it was on race carburetors. Yeah,
you're right, Charlie. I'm 100% convinced, but you'll have to watch the video, and I'll try to have it up sometime this week. What are your thoughts with carbs with 3 sets of idle circuits as opposed to 2? You talking about a 3-circuit carb like a Dominator? Well, in the case of the Edelbrock, that's a 4-circuit carburetor. The problem with the Holly versions, the Dominator in particular, I'll get into this because I'm going to show it, is where the transfer slot is located in relation to the throttle blade. With a typical 4150, the transition slot and the throttle blade are intersecting, meaning that if you open the throttle, you will actually expose the transfer slot.
Yeah, more fuel goes in as well.
In a Dominator, that is not the case. A Dominator, the transfer slot is raised about a ½ inch above that throttle opening. So what ends up happening is you're running off of the idle circuit until you get maybe 12 to 15% throttle opening. And then at that time, the transfer slot starts operating, but you also have an intermediate circuit, and it gets confused as to which circuit it's going to pull from.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, Andy. It's got three sets of idle circuits as opposed to two.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one I prefer, right? But there was some reason that I got a kind of a different route to get what I wanted out of a Dominator.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what it is.
A lot of people.
I know I didn't write about it in my book.
A lot of people will actually convert 3-circuit Dominators to 2-circuit because of that confusion. I mean, I can show you on my wideband air fuel meter when the carburetor goes crazy because it'll go rich, lean, rich, lean, and rich, lean, and then you open the throttle a little bit more, and then the carburetor will stabilize, because you're actually pulling more on the intermediate circuit versus the transfer slot. So, and it's a trade-off, but the Edelbrock is a 4-circuit carburetor. The idle circuit split in two, and then the high speed, the main circuit is split in two. So you have the best of both worlds. I mean, literally,
you've got air correctors for both.
You've got air correctors for each individual
that
circuit.
Means you've got emulsion tubes for each.
And it's
now we're starting to look like a Weber.
Yeah, it's starting to look like a Weber, and it will actually mimic. You can actually probably mimic fuel injection with this carburetor.
Now, of course, there's a lot of people out there going to say, how does this carburetor compare with the Holley HO carburetor?
HP or XP?
HP, yes, sorry, HP carburetors. Now, personally, I've found that the HP carburetors are a gem, right?
I'm going to be dyno testing. Just saying, I've got a set. Just saying.
So, when Edelbrock came out with their carburetor, I wondered just how much more they could get, if any, over the Holley carburetor, because I know that I've had them so that they would run one fuel air ratio, top to bottom.
Yeah, from top to bottom
to top, whichever.
And that's hard to do, really.
Yeah.
That's hard to maintain air fuel ratio.
Drilling little holes in the emulsion
from the top of the RPM range to bottom.
Air correctors and things like that.
But do I know what kind of power it's going to make on Casper? No. Do I know which one's going to run best at the track? I don't know. But we're going to find out all those things.
Here's the other thing. I was surprised at the Venturi design.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
Technically, it wasn't a Venturi.
Yeah.
It was a taper in and a taper out.
Yeah.
And obviously, they made it work.
Yeah. And I mean,
now that's something I've never tried. So I'm anxious to get one on the flow bench and see just what happens.
We might need to do that.
Yeah.
Ricky's asking, would you prefer the Dominators on the strip? That remains to be seen. And that's going to be things that I'm going to be testing, because ultimately what I want to do is go to the drag strip, make baseline runs with the Dominators, pull the carburetors off, swap carburetors, go make a couple more runs on the same day. That way that we're trying to eliminate as many variables as we can. That way we got accurate data, So we'll see. David, we're coming up on 2 hours, buddy.
We are? Good Lord. We must have a great audience, because I don't know where the time goes. 8:59.
So would you like to promote anything? This is your channel. I'm just here visiting.
Well, look, guys, and I say this to everyone. Some people object to me always asking for subscriptions. Yeah. They think I shouldn't be doing it. I should be doing all this work, but not asking anything in return. Well, I don't see that point, right? Both Andy and I, for me, this is a full-time job. For Andy, it's a big part-time job.
Yeah.
Right? He's probably doing 35 hours a week.
Every bit.
On
top of my regular day job.
I'm doing about 50 hours a week, not the last few weeks because my health hasn't been up to it. Now, here's the point. Let me ask you this. Why would I go to a race meeting with a race car and not tweak the engine to the best I could? Right? For those people who said I talk too much about subscriptions, why would I leave potential circulation on the table? That's like not being as competitive as you could be. Look, I've got to be here, and Andy, to stay in business, we've got to be one step at least in front of our opposition. We have to look at who's out there, and we have to do a better job than them. And
because there's only 24 hours a day to watch YouTube.
That's right. And here's the other thing. We're delivering more, how should I say, accurate technical stuff than anybody else out there, right? There's people out there that are doing good stuff. They work hard at it.
Yes,
right?
They do.
Richard's a
good example. Richard Holdner's a good example.
Right.
Yeah.
That guy, I'm convinced
he never
goes to bed at night.
He never sleeps.
Richard, if you ever get to watch this, and you should do.
Yeah.
Right. Don't overdo it. Sometime you're going to need a vacation, so that's an excuse to swing by here. Anyway, we're not going to leave anything on the table. We can only exist by virtue of subscribers. If we don't get subscribers, we don't exist. Now ask yourself, all those people who say, well, we don't like you doing all these subscribers. Well, do me a favor, don't watch the channel then.
Yeah.
We don't need people with a negative attitude.
No.
We work hard at this, and we have to do everything we can. And folks, if you think there's any way you can improve our situation here, remember, the more money comes into our coffers, the more we spend it on doing tests.
That's exactly right.
Just think, if you look at my transmission test when I did the polished gears, it cost me $2,350 odd to do that, right? Where do you think that money comes out of? So far as my pocket here. If I'm willing to spend that much money, and Andy,
same way with me and my stuff.
Do you think you could take the energy to push a button which says subscribe?
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to complain about that, don't do it.
Yeah.
Instead, think about what we have to do to get our people to watch this, so we can make it financially viable for us to do. So when you've got this finger ready, push on that subscribe button.
Yep. It helps us bring good content.
Right? We want to see if between Andy and I, we are approaching 100,000 subscribers. Now, that's MotorTec Features is approaching 100,000 subscribers. That's his channel and my channel. We are now under the MotorTec Features umbrella. Right? Give us a break. Right? Stop all these complaints. Oh, and here's the other thing. I've often thought about starting a channel, and it's going to be called The War on Trolls. Right? Let me tell you, one thing I've found out about most trolls is I'm smarter than they are. Not that I'm brilliantly smart. I found that most trolls are brilliantly stupid, right? Or they don't read properly, or they don't absorb something properly.
Here you go.
Or they've got a slanted idea.
This is all you need to know right here. I never see trolls at the racetrack, and that is so true.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there are some, but they hide.
So,
and here's the other thing. How many trolls out there actually use their real name? Right. You know what? For people who have negative opinions on stuff and don't use their real name, I've got one word for you. No, actually, I can't count. 2. You're yellow.
Yeah. There you go. So same thing, you know, help us grow the channel so that we can keep making good, honest content for you folks, because that's why we're doing it. You know, here's the thing. David and I, we've been doing this stuff for years. Ever since I've known him.
We were younger then, weren't
Yeah,
we? By a whole
but the
bunch.
thing about it is now we video the things that we're actually
Yeah.
doing in our day-to-day life,
Yep.
so that you can get to see our journey.
One thing I want to tell people why I do this, right? Very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly, right? When I was a kid, I was very ill. Very ill. I got malaria, dysentery, and pneumonia all at once. This is when I lived in North Africa, in Morocco. And, you know, the war was on. World War II was on when I lived there. And when I came back to England, when my family came back to England, and I went to a regular school, I looked like skin and bones. I looked like I'd come out of Belson. And there was a cereal called Grape Nuts.
Yeah.
And the kid on there was a bit like the one you see in the weightlifter when the 95-pound guy gets sand kicked in his face, right? And his girlfriend goes off for the big muscle guy. Anyway, the thing was, I needed to put on some weight. I needed to build strength, right? I was lighter at 7 years old than I was at 5. That's how bad it was.
Man, that's not good.
It wasn't until I was almost 7 that the doctor said, we think he'll live now. That's how bad it was. I escaped death by a very small margin. Well, so Grape Nuts. They said they'll help you build muscle on it. Bullshit. I hated Grape Nuts and I ate them for about 2 years.
How did that work out for you?
Didn't work at all. It was a whole load of lying, right? And ever since then, I thought advertising is 90% bullshit.
There you go.
10%
There
free
you
color.
go. If you
Here's
take
another
anything
proof.
away tonight,
I
that's
remember
it.
watching, I was in a gas station filling up, and there's a big billboard. The guy was putting up this thing and he said, Olay, women's face cream. Never
Olay.
look your age again. That was, let me see, 60 years ago. Let me see. Those women who used it, they look like they're 80 years old now. So there's bullshit again. So many times. And here's the thing, women are more susceptible to bullshit than guys are. Right? Thank goodness.
Maybe,
but that doesn't
maybe not.
relieve guys of the problems. So what I thought was is somebody needs to take charge of telling the truth.
Yeah. So
when I started watching car magazines, I was actually a racer at the time. I thought, where did they get this freaking bullshit from?
Yeah.
Right. And anyway, I had to stop porting heads for a living. And my friend Mike, who was looking after me like he was my dad, my best brother, my best friend, and everything else combined, right, couldn't manage the work level of the business. He was good at one thing and I was good at another, but without me doing my share, he couldn't do his share because he did the work, the heavy work first, and I did the finishing work after. We didn't have an item to sell. So at that time, I had Cars and Car Conversions ask me if I'd like to write for them.
Yeah.
They offered me this job writing, which they wanted 2 articles a month. They'd pay me a full working wage on it.
Yeah.
And it took me a week to write a month's production. So
beat that.
Yeah. So I continued to do the R&D in the shop, but instead of selling it to customers, I sold articles to.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how I started writing. And the big deal is I refuse to take bribes and I refuse to print something that's not right.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've developed a reputation for doing just that. Everything I tell you on this program and every other article and book that I've ever written works just as I tell you it works. Period.
There you go. So, look, we've kept this fellow awake here. You've kept me awake until David said his friend don't sleep, and I'm like that too. I have to get some sleep here. Malta, it's already past 3 a.m.
Oh, what a beautiful country you live in.
So we better get off from here so they can get some
sleep.
sleep.
Don't forget, Subscribe my channel, subscribe Andy, and don't forget Revin Evan, right?
Yeah.
That guy really deserves your
Yeah.
help. You go on his channel, you won't be disappointed.
That's right.
Remember, everything's the way I tell you it is. Go on that channel and see if you don't think that his artwork's brilliant.
And we will see y'all in 2 weeks.
Yep, that'll be on Andy's channel.
Yeah.
Right, but I will let you know.
All right. Have a good night, y'all.
Right. Thank you all for watching. Good night, Carla.
Yep. Good night, Charlie. Good night, everybody.